Hello, fellow educators. Welcome to EduTalk Collaborative Conversations, the show where passionate educators converge to talk about all things teaching. Virtually in every episode of EduTalk, we delve into an insightful educational research study and hear from a dynamic panel of educators who discuss the study and then translate the findings into tangible tools for our everyday endeavors in education. I am your host, Jeni Langfeld, and in today's episode of EduTalk, I am thrilled to welcome Dr. LaDonna Griffin. She is a longtime educator and leader in our community. She is a seasoned professional with over 26 years of experience as a teacher and principal within the Omaha Public Schools district. Dr. Griffin has dedicated her career to advancing academic growth and dismantling the barriers within the educational system. Her efforts have been pivotal in promoting parent engagement and implementing practices that have significantly impacted student success. She is a fourth-generation Omaha resident. Dr. Griffin's commitment to her community and passion for education shine through in all of her endeavors. Join us today as we explore her desires for serving the students in Nebraska as she runs for a seat on the Nebraska State Board of Education. Today, we're going to delve into Dr. Griffin's experiences and leadership approach. We'll explore her key priorities, which include enhancing literacy, advocating for parent involvement, and fostering a growth mindset within the educational landscape. We'll also discover her vision for the future of education here in Nebraska. But before we do, let's talk briefly about the role of state school boards and their board members. A state school board is responsible for overseeing and guiding public education within a state. It acts as a governing body that sets educational policies and plans, ensuring that schools meet certain standards and regulations. The school board collaborates with the educational experts, such as the commissioner, to make informed decisions about curriculum and teacher qualifications. They manage the state education's finances, making budget proposals to ensure that schools and educational programs are adequately funded. The state school board plays an important role in approving and implementing various educational services and programs, such as special education and school meal programs. Now, school board members occupy influential positions in shaping the educational landscape of a state. As part of their duties, the members are tasked with setting strategic directions and establishing comprehensive policies that guide the function of schools in the state. They engage in critical decision-making processes related to educational standards, curricular offerings, and resource allocation. School board members collaborate with the Commissioner of Education and other key stakeholders to address various educational challenges and opportunities. More importantly, they act as liaisons between the public and the education system, ensuring that community voices are heard and incorporated into policy decisions. By participating in regular board meetings and ongoing professional development, state school board members maintain a current understanding of educational trends and best practices, enabling them to make informed contributions to the advancement of the state's educational goals. As a board member, Dr. Griffin will have an essential role in shaping the future of education in Nebraska by advocating for students' needs and ensuring equitable opportunities for all. That is why I am so excited to hear her thoughts on critical topics and learn more about her vision for the educational landscape in Nebraska. I am so glad that you are joining us and you have tuned in. Stay tuned, an insightful conversation awaits.
Please note that the opinions and views expressed by the host and panelists on this show are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of their employers or affiliated organizations.
Welcome back to EduTalk Collaborative Conversations. I'm your host, Jeni Langfeld, and this is your platform for engaging educational dialogue. Today we have a very special episode, and I have three guests that I can't wait for you to meet. In just a minute, they're going to introduce themselves to you, and then we're going to jump into a conversation about important topics and policies that are happening right here in our state, here in Nebraska. So up first, we have Dr. LaDonna Griffin. Thank you for being here today.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting us, Dr. Langfeld.
Absolutely. What do you want us to know about you?
So yes, I am Dr. LaDonna White Griffin, running for State Board of Education as a resident of Omaha, Nebraska, my entire life.
Yep.
Working very closely with the community. I look forward to bringing my wealth of knowledge to the Board of Education.
Yes.
Our responsibility as a state board is the oversight of K-12 education in the state of Nebraska.
So it's an important role. And
it's a very important role.
Yeah, we need good people in those seats. So I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
All right, up next we have Octavia Jones. Hello.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, what do you want us to know about you?
Not too much. I'm just here to kind of contribute to the conversation and just kind of shedding light on just the impact that Dr. Griffin has had on not only my personal education, but now on my two children's education and the journey of homeschooling.
Oh, thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
And then we have Kennedy with us. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks.
My name is Kennedy Jackson, and I'm a student of Leaders to Legends,
Hey.
a co-op homeschool facility that I attend with Dr. Griffin. She's amazing. My education with her has gone through the roof. I'm so thankful for her in my school system, in my school foundation.
Oh, I love that. Thanks for being here today. Your voice is incredibly important, so thank you for being here. Okay, so Dr. Griffin, tell us about what inspired you to run for this position, a seat on the Nebraska State Board of Education.
Absolutely. I'll start with my career in education.
Yes, please do. Yes.
As a classroom teacher
Yes.
and principal. So the inspiration truly came from students. It comes from our youth and our community, and being a resident again of the community for my entire life. And so my ability to bring about change as it supports the growth of students in our community.
So you've taught, you've been a principal, and now you're overseeing a homeschool co-op.
Yes.
Yay, okay, wonderful. Okay, moving on, talk to us about community impact and leadership. So you have a logo that's leadership that serves and a motto. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So leadership that serves, that came out of truly when I decided to run for State Board of Education. The first thing I went is, wow, this is going to be interesting because serving in the capacity I do and working hands-on directly with the youth in our community at the same time as going through a campaign has been a busy, busy place. And so, but I will say I'm running a marathon, and I can only do it with the support of our community in District 4.
Yes. Okay. And you've said this a few times, and I think I mentioned it in your introduction too, but you are a fourth generation resident of Omaha. And so tell us how living within the community that you serve has impacted how you serve and then your engagement with community members.
Absolutely. So there's nothing like knowing it up close and personal.
Right.
Being myself raised in that same community.
Yeah.
Attending the public schools, a graduate of the public schools.
Yep.
And then also coming from a very deep-rooted family who believed in education and the importance of education. And so the positive that comes out of that truly is understanding what's taking place in the community and being able to empower parents about their own strengths and their God-given talents as well.
Awesome. You guys want to jump in on any of that?
I'll just attest to, as she said, just being a part of the community. So I met Dr. Griffin as my assistant principal of the kindergarten that I attended, which was Lothrop Elementary, which happened to be the same school that my son attended all of 20 years later when I ran into her again, just looking for support when it came to the education of my son, seeing that there was disparities and not knowing where to turn because the education was not provided by the school. I didn't know who to go to for the advice. And so once she came about again, she was a trusted resource because I had known her all those years later and she had already positively impacted my life. And so it was a clear answer for me.
So you've known her for over 2 decades now.
Yeah,
Oh, I
yeah.
love
There was a
that.
gap, but God
Yeah.
brought us back together
Amen.
for this divine purpose, and I thank Him for that. So,
I love that. Okay. In what ways would you involve community members in decision-making processes as a state school board member?
Absolutely. And so empowerment is the word that comes to mind right away.
Yeah.
Just helping parents to even understand how much their voice matters and that they have a part in that.
Yes.
And that if truly, again, I know I've said this a lot, but that if something's not working, you do have some options. There are things you can do to make sure you're providing the best education to your child.
Yeah, so giving parents and community members space to share their ideas and reminding them that people are listening, or I'm here to listen.
That's
and
right.
We'll pass that along. Absolutely love that.
and remembering that it's a collaborative effort, not taking teachers out of the portion, but just from teachers to the community to the parent, that this is a collaborative effort and that all parts have to make sure that they have a voice in it.
Yeah, we're in this together.
Right.
Students as well.
Yes,
That's
most
right.
importantly, most
Way
importantly.
to chime in there.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Okay, so let's switch to literacy, which I know is a priority for you. Okay. So in your current work, what literacy trends are you observing among families and our youth, and how are you addressing those challenges?
Ooh, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, that is.
Right.
So, but I'm so glad you asked that question. One of the trends that I'm truly seeing is we have students who are reading way above the grade level, but then when we peel back and start to discuss some of the things like vowels and consonants and some phonics, they have learned to read.
Yep.
But then there's some gaps and holes in phonics.
True.
And so really pushing phonics. I know at the state board right now, there's some federal funding that just took place.
Good.
That's to support reading.
Yep.
And it's a lot of federal funding that's to support reading.
Yeah.
So as a board member, I would really like to pay close attention to where that funding goes
Yes.
and how it's supporting increasing the reading and literacy of the students who need it most. We do know, looking at test scores and the results that we're seeing, the need is there.
Yeah.
And so being able to have oversight over that and making sure that we really are looking at strong phonics
Yep.
and not allowing what I've seen sometimes behavior to be the excuse
Right.
for not having academic strength. And so
Yes.
building on the strengths that we know students have. And that's what we've been able to do as a co-op,
Okay.
is really looking at their strengths and then growing from there.
Beautiful. Do either of you want to chime in on that?
I'll just attest to it, as it has been the fruits of the labor for my own son.
Okay.
Because one of the things for him was when he was in OPS, he would know that displaying these behaviors is what's going to get him out of the classroom to prevent him from doing the work. And it just happened for so long to where by the time I homeschooled, there were so many gaps. And he tried to continue that trend, but with Dr. Griffin's help, she just helped me to realize where are the holes, where are the parts that he feels most supported, and how can I strengthen him in that, as to where prior the school would just kind of call me and say, hey, he's having these troubles, you either have to come get him, because they themselves didn't have, the resources to meet him where he was at. And it was not that collaborative effort that I talked about. And so I just kind of didn't feel like I had any choices.
Yeah.
But then in homeschooling, it kind of just made me feel empowered as a parent, for one, to know what's going on, and then to how to go about it, to find the resources for him and to meet him where his needs were.
Yeah.
So,
So meeting that need is identifying the gaps that we see in students, having the right tools to meet those needs. And then once we fill in those gaps, then students
Right.
can thrive.
right.
And when they're struggling, then we see these other things happening that distract from learning. And
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
they get, yep, beautiful. Okay. I forget if we're going to do that question. So we're going to do this one, parent advocacy. What strategies have proven effective in fostering strong partnerships with parents and ensuring that their voices are heard in educational decision making?
Absolutely. I really want to piggyback on that literacy piece because
Yes.
that is what I believe in so strongly, and how to empower parents in that process as well. As a school principal, my last 3 years at the
Okay.
school that I was at, I worked closely with teachers and said, you know what, if we're going to remove the behavior piece, which we did, there were no suspensions for 3 years in a row in a K-5 school at that time. And my trade-off was, but I promise you, every reading and math classroom will have 2 paraprofessionals and a classroom teacher.
Wow.
We know right now it is set up for special education. You have to show failure before you get the support.
It's true.
And so working hard, then we know that's 2 years behind. It's too late.
Too late.
You know, we're running a marathon then, and we never really win the race.
Yeah.
And so what I did is every classroom had 2 paras and the classroom teacher, and regardless if the child had an IEP or was placed in special education, if there was a need, fill it.
Yeah.
And we did that, and guess what? The achievement gap closed at
course
the
it
school
did.
that I was at.
Yep.
And so we know what to do.
Yes.
It's a matter of being innovative and willing to do some of those things too. Make sure we're meeting the needs of the children that are in front of us.
Yeah. And being proactive instead of waiting for people to
Yes.
fail. You're nailed it. Yes. Beautiful. Okay. I know another thing that's really important to you is growth mindset. So how do you envision ingraining a growth mindset among educators and students in our state?
Yes, absolutely. So being in education for the time that I have been and in my tenure, poverty comes up often. And the word poverty is often associated with something negative or this deficit model.
Right.
When in reality, what I have seen and I continue to see today, and a living witness of it myself, living testimony of it myself, is that I have to ask that question. I ask many, is poverty really all that awful when it comes to academics? Because I ask that because poverty actually builds a resilience in people that it can't be seen, it cannot be, you can't define it.
Yep.
It happens because this is just life. Even in my travels to third world countries, I see that same thing. You know, I may go and I say, oh my, it's so tough, or it's really, it's their norm.
That is
They
their norm.
figured this thing out.
Yep.
And I prove that in many different, I'll say many cases, many small examples in working in the schools and working with individual families.
Yep.
And then currently today, what we see and how we're working with students. Poverty actually is, I'd like to see it as a resilience thing and an asset instead of a deficit.
Absolutely.
Because when we approach it as asset, then abundance comes after that.
Oh,
And
that's
so,
so good.
so yeah, and that's the shift in mindset that
Yeah.
I really would like to see.
Well, that reminds me of a conversation I had with a colleague years ago when growth mindset was just kind of gaining some traction. And we get on these trends in education and then we throw these words around. And she was like, now, Jeni, just be careful because you are serving kids who probably have more grit in their little pinky finger.
No.
You know, and
yes.
and so that just reminded me of that conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now it's time for some success stories, and I know you have lots of them. Just give us some examples of how you've implemented, and you just gave us a great one, innovative educational practices, and then their impact that they've had. So is there another success story that you want to share?
There is, and so I want to say yesterday, opened up the newspaper, or Google is where I read it.
Yep.
But there was an article from Omaha Public Schools that was focused on the decrease in suspensions district-wide.
Okay.
As I was sharing the work that I was doing with no suspensions and preventative instead of reactive, and dismantling the school to prison pipeline through innovative practices. Following that came a lot of discussion within the community. And from that, Justice for Kids initiative has already existed.
Okay.
They worked very hard, and legislation passed not too long ago where they no longer can suspend kindergarten through second grade.
Right.
I'd like to say that work definitely has contributed to the lowered suspensions across the public
That
schools.
is
So that is exciting to hear,
amazing.
yes.
Yes.
And it's not where we'd like to see it yet.
Right.
But it definitely is lower.
Yeah.
So
We're
it's
going in the
headed
right direction.
That's
Yeah,
right, headed in
that's
the right
right, that's
direction.
right.
So, yes.
What about you ladies? Like what success stories have you seen personally or in your friends around you, families?
Did you have something else?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'll let you.
My personal success story is just school.
Yeah.
Like, I've had a lot of problems in school.
Mm-hmm.
So coming to a homeschool facility or just being homeschooled in general has set my mindset to grow. So it's definitely better. That's success for me. Like from being told, you can't read, you have dyslexia, da 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 da. I have read perfectly without no disappointment.
Oh.
I was so proud of myself.
Yeah, and you should be.
Yes, and half that thanks goes to Miss LaDonna. Like, she's a big factor in my life. Like, yeah.
Oh, thank you for
That's awesome,
sharing.
Kitty.
Yeah. That's what I want every student in our state to experience is that feeling of I am proud of myself and the work that I've accomplished. Good job, Kennedy.
Yeah.
Anything?
So I'll just kind of attest to from the parent side of Kennedy's story. So Just kind of going back to my son's experience, he was in kindergarten and I switched him schools because the prior one just wasn't working. We were coming out of that hybrid educational model. Yeah. And so he started kindergarten. For me to find out they took naps out of kindergarten. Whose crazy idea? I don't know. So my 5-year-old is napping in class. And so, yeah, he's napping in class after he's coming back from this hybrid learning model, half the week at home, half the week at school.
Right.
So Levi took his own naps. He would sleep and I would get calls because it's considered disruptive behavior. And even though they never formally suspended him, it still was documented. And so to me, it was just as well as a suspension. Just because it was regarded as something different didn't change the fact of what it was, which then took away from his educational time. And Levi spent more time either at work with me or at home than he did at school because of things like not having enough paras in the classroom. And so if he needed a little bit more help than the other child, there was no one to tend to those needs. And so it's considered disruptive behavior. And so he was sent home quite a lot. And it got to the point to where his last year of schooling, which was the first grade, Levi was on half days. Not formally, but just because they couldn't push that suspension. And so they're just like, okay, well, this is our solution. We'll go half days. To where I didn't know what to do at that point. And so just having initiatives such as these to address the grassroots of what's going on. It's the fact that, you know, he does have gaps and there are changes and we don't have the capacity to address those changes. So then we're going to the next thing, which is to send them home. But then now there's all these holes and then I'm not being educated, you know, on how to address these concerns or how to work with the teachers to ensure that they're able to do what they need to do for my child and the other children that they're responsible for. And so just initiatives such as these is just the start to address the root problems to then be able to work together on what is the solution from there. But you first have to address the foundation of the house before you can build the rest. So
good strategy for sure. And then those decisions for him are drastically impacting your work life and ability to then provide for family, which brings on a whole nother layer of stress, I'm sure. Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to go back to a question. Okay, how do you plan to address the integration of cultural and community values into our educational system statewide?
Absolutely. And so the first thing that comes to mind is shared power.
Okay.
You know, just as I was hearing Octavia speak, it definitely rang loud in my head, shared power. You know, and what that looks like. And if I choose to have my child in a school setting, then I am choosing that I have to share power as a parent. But that shared power also has to be the parent's voice has to be heard. And so, but the parent navigates some things as well to make sure their voice is heard. And so they have to work together. You know, I always say when anyone in the community comes to me about concerns that are with children that are in the schools, that really look at your part, the teacher's part, and how you can share power together. And if we don't know what that looks like, let's go and have a conversation so that teacher feels confident and good about what they're doing, and parent sees that their child's needs are being met as well.
For sure. And you and I have had conversations before on just our philosophy on the roles that parents play in children's education, period, that they are the primary teacher. And so no matter what school setting that I am in, I view myself as partnering with them as opposed to inviting them to partner with me. But that's not necessarily a mindset that everybody has. But then it opens the door to have great conversations.
Absolutely.
We're on the same team and we love this student. And what can we do? So good.
And I'll just kind of attest to that, you know, just from personal experience, and then even other parents' experiences. So when that door was opened for me, I first was starting to have conversations with Dr. Griffin a year before I even transferred Levi to homeschooling. And so once I knew like I had the power, it then opened up the principal and the teachers, you know, like opportunity to share things with me because they seen that I was vested. You know, I didn't know what I didn't know until I knew it. And so what questions to ask, to be more involved in certain things and to make sure that I was more present, not just physically present, but even like mindfulness, like when I'm going home, when I'm going to work, you know, because like I said, Levi spent a lot of time with me, but I really wasn't present for him. You know, he was at work with me, but he wasn't really getting what he needed. And so that meant that I had to step aside from certain things to be able to show up more for him.
So we haven't talked about this yet, but are there ways that you've helped parents become advocates for their students in a variety of settings, school settings? Do you have any?
Absolutely, and one of the best ways is what Octavia just explained.
Right,
That
that's
is,
what I was
yes,
thinking.
That you are, realizing that you are the first teacher.
You are.
Accountability and responsibility rest on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Right.
And walking in that, walking in that as you walk in and have conversations.
Yeah.
And understanding that what you say does matter.
Yep.
And I will say, if it's not working and you've given it some time and you feel like you've vested all that you
Yeah.
can in the situation, you also have the authority to make a different decision.
Right.
And that is what I hope was never taken away from parents. That's the parent choice piece that I
Right.
talk about. a
Yeah,
lot,
you do.
that parents do, that the authority remains and lies on the accountability and responsibility of the parent.
Yeah. What I love to empower parents with is you, as an advocate for your child, you don't have to know all the answers.
That's right.
Like, you don't have to understand the deep science of reading to advocate for your child, but you can still show up for them and glean from other experts.
Yes,
as
and
we
you,
do
and
this
you can
thing
also
together.
see what's not there that you'd like to see there, so have that conversation.
Yes.
Because you probably can get there together on how to make that happen.
Totally agree. Okay, we're gonna wind down this conversation, but before we do, as you look forward to your role on the State Board of Education, what are your most ambitious hopes and visions for changes that you wish to see in our state?
Absolutely. So on the board of 8, I really would look forward to bringing my wealth of knowledge and experience to the State Board of Education, so that maybe shift some mindset
Yeah,
or add on to some knowledge
yeah,
and having some very fruitful conversations to see how collectively we can work together
Yeah.
and bring about change, positive change in education across the state of Nebraska.
well said. Okay, so before we get off of here, will you tell individuals how they can support your campaign or learn more about your initiatives and how they can contribute?
Absolutely. And so my first thing I'm going to say, it's coming up real quickly here, make sure you vote on November 5th. So
Right.
go out and vote.
Yeah.
But then also, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about myself and my thoughts and beliefs about education, I am going to send you to Facebook,
Yeah.
which is Dr. LaDonna Griffin for State Board of Education, or also my website as well.
Yes, and if we got to get Kennedy's sign here, yay! That's awesome.
Yes.
Well, thank all three of you so much for being here today and sharing your thoughts and experiences. We look forward to Election Day, which is coming up very quickly. For those of you joining us, thank you so much. I truly believe that we can transform education one conversation at a time. But another way we can transform education is by voting. So make sure you get out and vote, because your voice matters, and we have important decisions to make about the future of our education in Nebraska, and we need your help. Thanks for being with us. We want to shine a light on the heroes of education. There's a lot of them. Do you know an educator who's making a positive impact in their school, community, or district? You can recognize them by nominating them for our monthly Educator Spotlight. Each month, we will feature one inspirational educator who's altering the academic landscape for the better. In other words, they're making a difference. Help us celebrate their exceptional contributions to learning and leadership by nominating them today.